What if the biggest breakthrough in your business or life isn't a new strategy, but becoming the person who's truly ready for success? In this episode, we're diving deep with transformation expert Greg Schweitzer to explore how mastering your mindset, influence, and personal freedom can change everything. If you're feeling stuck, burnt out, or just ready to level up, this one's for you. What if the real key to high performance and fulfillment wasn't in the latest productivity hack, but in unlocking a deeper, more powerful version of yourself? Today on the Pauline Chilton Show, I'm joined by Greg Schweitzer, the founder and chief catalyst of the Catalyst Transformation Institute, with over 17 years of experience and certification in NLP, hypnosis, time techniques, and coaching. Greg is a master at helping solopreneurs and small teams unlock their highest potential. He's worked with thousands of individuals and teams to rewire their mindset, amplify their influence, and create lasting transformation in both life and business. In this episode, Greg shares how becoming your own catalyst is the fastest path to personal freedom and professional greatness. And he walks us through the tools and insights that have changed the game for countless clients. If you've ever felt stuck in your success, burnt out in your business, or just unsure what's next, this conversation is going to spark something big. Let's dive in. Hi, Greg. Thank you for being on the show today.
Hi, yes. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. It's so fun. And what a generous introduction there. And I would say thank you because it really was pretty accurate. I mean, I really am a firm believer in the idea that, businesses don't run themselves and health doesn't manifest itself, right? All of those things don't come into fruition by themselves. And they really have one particular impetus, and that's people. That's us, right? And so when we can be operating optimally and be the best version of ourselves, our own catalyst, then it really trickles out into virtually every other thing, including the results we want in our life. And so it's going to be a fun conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Me too. Greg, the name of your institute, Catalyst Transformation, immediately sparked curiosity in me. So For the listeners, can you take us back to the moment you realized you were the catalyst and how that shaped the work you do today?
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you for that. It's interesting because when I came up with the name, I'm kind of funny this way. I like to be very purposeful stuff. I don't want to just create a name that's like, ooh, that sounds all fun and interesting or, whatever, just attractive and that kind of thing. I really wanted to represent the work I was doing, but it also needed to represent people I'm working with, because everything I do in business, in my work, is only a success if they are. That's literally my work. Is if you, Pauline, become a better version, you get a better result, you have a better life and relationship, that's when I know that my work's doing well. And so as I thought about it, it's like, I'm not really the star of the show here. Okay. And so therefore I'm more of a catalyst to help ignite and unleash all the greatness that's inside of a person. Okay. And sometimes that's all of our inner psychology and that kind of stuff. And sometimes it's the outward strategies and techniques and tactics that we take and we use. And so I labeled it Catalyst Transformation because I wanted people to have that kind of transformation to let out the best version of themselves. But I also knew that I'm not the star of the show, right? I'm just merely a catalyst who ignites that change in people. And it's people who do the work and make the good things happen and the transformation happen. So that's where that came from.
Oh, that's great. You've worked with thousands of solopreneurs, small teams. What are some of the most common patterns you see holding high achievers back, and how do you help them break through?
Those are some good questions. So I'm glad you asked this question in the way that you did, because when it comes to any result a person has in their life, whether it's the person they're being or the business they're running, or if it's I'm a sports person, I'm trying to shorten my time on the track. There are key patterns that are unique, or I should say common amongst us as human beings, that if we pay attention to those, we can actually replicate them. And the whole world of the field of neurolinguistic programming is really just a field of studying and modeling how people got specific good results in our life, right? And bad ones for that matter, so we can avoid them, right? And then being able to replicate those. And so this is what's really interesting about the work that I do, is that everybody knows everybody knows the word mindset, and everybody knows that you've got to do certain things in order to get different results. And everybody knows you should probably be consistent, but it's not what you know. It's what you can get yourself to do and how you can get yourself to show up. Because if you're not operating that particular way, you can do the thing and not get the result, right? And so what I've done is I've been able to study the field, but also study people. And as I've worked with like literally thousands of people over time, I've started to see what those key things are and where they show up in people. The key things that sabotage them and get them off track, and the key things that help them flourish and succeed. And so I can notice those things, and it gives me a way to help them. It's like, oh, we just hit a spot in the road right now where you have a tendency to go this direction, and you don't need me to tell you that's not working for you or that's not serving you. And they're like, yeah, it's really a pain in the neck. Well, let's explore what it might look to take a left instead of a right. But sometimes the impetus of change has to do with recognizing, number one, that things aren't the way they could be or the way they want them to be. And number two, where is that happening? Where in the process of me showing up in life is that happening? And all of a sudden I'm on a different track. Right? You've ever watched a train and it's going down the road, and all of a sudden there's a little switch, and the switch goes over, and then the train goes onto a completely different track. There are things in our life that are triggered like that shoot us off in a direction. Sometimes those directions aren't helpful or aren't pleasant, right? Or just don't get us where we want to go. And so being able to recognize where that switch or that trigger is happening, and then be able to install new methodologies of being able to, or new tactics and patterns to be able to do those kind of things. That's what I spend most of my time doing. And some of those are internal triggers and transformations, and some of them are in our externals for what we need to do. So if it's business, a lot of times in business, there's always the mental, emotional work of being an entrepreneur, of being in business and that kind of thing. And so we work on those things so I can think differently and think better, and those kind of things that are more supportive. But then externally, I got to do things. I got to make calls and get new clients, and I've got to, I've got to handle the business, and I've got to order products and whatever the things that we got to do. So how can I do those things better and more consistently? So it's a combination of your who and your do is really what I'm working with people. It's unique, but a lot of times when you work with a business coach, it's all about tactics and that kind of stuff. And if you work with a life coach or a counselor, it's all about your personal psychology. One of the things I love about what I do is they don't exist apart from each other, right? As human beings, we are naturally a combination of our who and our do, what I call our existence and our execution, right? I call it the E squared principle. We've got to get both of those pieces working for us. We've got to get our mindset and our psychology working for us. And I'm becoming less and less of a fan of the word mindset, because everybody's heard it, but nobody knows what to do with it, right? And so there's the psychology part of us, right? And then there's the part of us that's out there taking actions and showing up in the world. And we need to get those two pieces working together. They need to be congruent and synergistic together. Otherwise, it's either harder or it doesn't happen. So hopefully that helps you see where I'm at with that. Now, that being said, that's the work that I do. The tactics, for lack of better words, the strategies, the techniques, the conversation I have with people is going to be a little bit different each time depending on where they're at.
And I really like what you're saying about how mindset has just become such a common word, but nobody really knows what it means. So you're certified in NLP, hypnosis, time techniques. Some of these may sound mysterious to people. Can you kind of explain what that means? And then I would also like you to share a story of a client transformation using one of these tools that really stuck with you.
Sure. That's really helpful. Oh, yeah. So thank you for bringing that up, because the originators and creators of neurolinguistic programming, these two gentlemen, it was Richard Bandler and John Grinder. Richard Bandler was a guy who studied a little bit of psychology, but he was also computer sciences. And so he kind of understood the structure of how things work. John Grinder was a linguist, right? And so he understood the power of language and paralanguage and how that affected us. And the two of them got together. They started studying people who were getting some of the best results initially in therapy. So Milton Erickson was considered the best hypnotherapist of all time, because he was able to get results that other counselors, psychiatrists, and hypnotherapists and that kind of things couldn't get. He had a particular way he did things. And so they watched and they studied him and they listened to the way he spoke and how he operated. Same thing with a woman named Virginia Satir, who had kind of an opposite way of doing these things. And when they studied them, and also some other people, Fritz Perls, Greg Batesman, those kind of things, they started learning a little bit more about how the human person worked and why we do things we do and why some of us get sabotaged and some of us succeed, even though we've had the same experience, right? Somebody might have the experience of like, gee, my mom was abusive to me. And you got one person whose life is terrible and they're always in trouble and maybe they're on drugs or just darker stuff, right? And you got another person who like becomes president of a company and is very successful, and they both had the same kind of experience. And so they wanted to understand, how does that happen? Okay, so I share that with you kind of as some origins, because neurolinguistics is also like a superset of hypnosis and hypnotherapy and those kind of things. When I'm talking about hypnosis, I'm not talking about stage hypnosis where you get up there and people get to cluck like a chicken on stage and those kinds of stuff. I'm actually talking about the therapeutic part that understands the human psyche, right? And how we operate and those kind of things. And interestingly enough, most of the time, at least with the work that I do, I don't have to take somebody into deep trance like you see in Hollywood, right? Where they're just totally out sort of thing. Most change work doesn't need to happen in deep hypnosis or deep focus, if you will. We can do most of it conversationally. Okay, so I'm glad you asked me this question, because what happens is when you hear things like neuro-linguistic programming, time techniques, which is an acronym for something, that can sound very, oh my gosh, it's like very, highbrow or something like that. And really, it was just because the people at the time who generated this, came up with this field of work, they were linguists and computer scientists, so it's very technical kind of language, okay? And really it's just understanding how the human person functions, what gets us to succeed, what gets us to sabotage. Now, answering your question about a particular client, this was kind of fun because this happened to me back in the fall. I don't even remember where I was. I think I was actually at an event where I was going to speak somewhere, and I got this text message, and it says, hey, I just really want to thank you for the work that you did with me around my beliefs and my fear with money and my business. She said, because I'm doing so much better now. And by the way, I'm sending you this message because I'm in the middle of my own training because I wanted to learn some NLP stuff as well. So she was taking a training on this. I was like, who is this person? Because I didn't recognize the phone number at first. And when I looked it up, it was a previous client of mine, and she ran a small little business where it was kind of like marketing materials and products like pens and those kind of things, but also helping people like in real estate and those kind of things market as well. But she wasn't generating as much business and doing as well as she wanted to, but she had all the potential and the skill to do it. She was very creative and very talented. It just wasn't turning into a lot of business for her. And she exposed to me that she's like, well, I'm kind of have these weird experiences with money in my past. And so we took 2 sessions around this particular topic. I worked with her for 6 to 8 months or something like that, but on her business. But in these couple of sessions, we did some hypnotherapy. Again, it wasn't deep trance kinds of stuff around money and how she viewed it. And we did some conversational stuff around that. And then we worked for a few more months together. And then after that, she was kind of off and doing her own thing. And I hadn't heard from her. And it just came out of the blue. And so it was a blessing to me to kind of go, oh, that's so cool that she got to have that shift. But it's also a good example of the myriad types of things that can show up in our lives that either get in the way or we don't think are a big deal, right? It's like, oh yeah, I guess that does actually happen. And so when we become more aware of those, and we've got some ways to talk through those, work through those, that's what I love doing with people. So
just it came to my mind as we were talking about how many people tend to self-sabotage. What is something someone can do to stop that from happening?
Okay, all right. This is a great question because there's 2 parts to this. Number 1 is what the heck is self-sabotage and why would we do that to ourselves? I mean, nobody wakes up in the morning and go, how can I make my life miserable? We look in the mirror and go, like, your day's going to suck today, Greg. I'm going to make this miserable for you. We don't do that to ourselves consciously, okay? And so when we look at scenarios of self-sabotage, it's almost always, pretty much always, a protective mechanism. There's something in here, a past experience or understanding or belief that if I do this thing, it's going to cause pain of some sort of pain or suffering. And this is happening on a subconscious level. This is not us thinking this consciously going, oh yeah, right? It's happening in our subconscious, right? Emotions don't make sense. They're not logical. Okay, they just show up, but they show up to protect us. And so that's kind of what this is, the protective mechanisms. Like if I'm a real estate agent and I need to make a certain number of calls and have conversations each week to get clients, but I'm not willing to make the calls, or I'm not willing to host an open house because when people come in and talk to me and I don't know what to say, we protect ourselves from those things. So we just avoid them or don't do them, or we do a version of them that isn't actually the thing. Okay, that doesn't make you bad. It doesn't make you broken. And I hope everybody's hearing this piece, because change work is not about like you having to push yourself to be better, right? You don't have to be more. You have to be more of who you are. Does that make sense? You don't have to be more than you are. You have to be all that you are. And this is about letting that piece out. And so there's something in you, and it's working correctly, that's protecting you from any sort of concern or pain or suffering. Okay, so once you realize that, find out what is the positive intent of that, the positive intent of some sort of safety. What am I trying to protect myself from? That's the first piece. Okay. Once we realize that, then we need to start taking a look at, like, okay, so when I do that particular thing that is self-sabotaging, what am I really actually getting from that? What am I not getting by behaving in a self-sabotaging way? Am I okay with what I'm getting or not getting? Because then what starts to happen is we can then logically and rationally approach the scenario, because it's an emotional scenario. The emotions are going, nope, 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 we don't go there. Right? Stop it, stop it, stop it. Thank you for trying to protect me, emotions and subconscious. But logically, what you're doing is you're putting me in more pain because I'm not getting what I want, or it's taking me farther away, or I'm self-medicating in some way, shape, or form. And everybody does it in their own ways. It could be social media, it could be drugs and alcohol, it could be, we have a myriad ways we can do that kind of stuff. But we're doing it as some sort of avoidance. It's like, okay, wait, is that giving me anything I want? And in some cases, it's making it worse, right? That's the understandings of how that works with us. We all do it for subconsciously, okay? Understanding the subconscious, understanding that something is subconscious is really, really helpful, because nobody consciously tries to make their life harder. But understanding that piece is going to be really helpful. Secondly, we have to a popular word nowadays is rewire. And in the nervous system, when you have done a behavior enough times, you're literally physically creating a nerve cell, a neuron. Like they've actually mapped this, and they've watched a human brain. And when somebody, like say smoking a cigarette, somebody smokes a cigarette, it literally will create, the behavior will create a new neuron in the body. Right? Yeah, in the body of the brain. And then you smoke again, and you smoke again, and you smoke again, and these nerves get layered on, and they become bundles. A bundle is a habit. And what we have to be able to do is go, okay, what do I need to do to starve that particular bundle of nerves, or that habit, if you will, and replace it with something else? Sometimes this is done by making yourself do something differently. Sometimes we can be done by going inside and helping you think through, oh, normally I do this and this and this, and then that's where I self-sabotage. What can I install right there? And this is what I do in NLP. Install something in there that interrupts that old pattern that takes me down a dark road, and put something in there that takes me in a better direction. So that is the essence of what's happening there. The skill to be able to do that's a wholly different story. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so people should never feel so bad that this happening, but they should never feel bad that, like, to get a coach, to get a practitioner, all right, or a therapist or something like that, to help you with that stuff, because dang, it's hard work, right? It's not easy if you don't have that skill set and you don't know how to do that kind of stuff. Not to mention, it's sometimes very hard for you to be both coach and coachee of yourself. Some people can do it, and in certain scenarios we can, but some of the heavier stuff, it's harder for me to kind of step in here and kind of go, okay, I'm having this issue and I'm feeling this particular way. Now I got to step over here and go, oh, so now I'm playing coach. So trying to play coach and coachee at the same time is very difficult for a lot in certain situations.
Mm-hmm. Great. And so personal freedom and fulfillment are at the heart of your mission. Can you tell us about a time in your own life where you were not free and what it took to reclaim that?
Yeah, wow. Great question. Pauline, not too many people ask me this question, and I'm going to tell you why I like the question. Because to make an assumption that somebody like me, who has years and years of experience and a whole bunch of certifications, to make the assumption that I got it all together, that it's all fixed and everything's hunky-dory and my life's great, right? We get to see through media, especially social media, those kind of things, we get to see everybody's highlight reels and the movie trailers of their life, and it always looks great and amazing, right? But the thing is I've had my own share. I've probably had more than my share of challenge and suffering and health issues and those kinds of things. And I've had to make a choice. The choice was either I roll over and this is done and this life sucks, and or I'm going to die, or whatever it might be, or it's I got to reapproach. I got to find a different way, right? And there isn't anybody who's got this stuff all figured out. It's just that we keep moving on, because we may figure one thing out and get it taken care of, but there's constant interference of life showing up to us, right? There's constant things flying in our face all particular time, trying to get our attention and make us think differently. And it's generally not sometimes it's generally not like a force of somebody trying to take us out, although those do exist. But like between media and messaging and those kinds of things, it's like there's a book out there called The Shallows. And the guy who wrote the book talks about the fact that we have so much information coming at us at this day and age in 2025 that there's so much of it coming at us that would crash a laptop inside of 4 to 5 days. Like laptops can handle gigabytes of information. That's huge amounts. And this is coming at us any time. We try to filter through it and sift through it and try to understand it and make sense of it and utilize it or avoid it. Or that's a lot of stuff for us to process. And so all that interference can show up and get us off track and junk us up and those kind of things. So don't ever feel bad about that. Just know that just like every day, you got to get up and take a shower so you don't get rotten, right? We've got to do this for our mental, emotional life too, for our performance life too. Is we've got to continue to sharpen the saw. We've got to continue to scrub and rinse and clean out the junk to make room for the good life. So personal freedom and flourishing and fulfillment is at the core of everything else. When you look at an old example would be like people have seen something called like the wheel of life, right? You've got your professional life, your career, and then you've got your relationships, and then you've got your health and fitness, and then you've got right, those different categories. But what's right at the center of those is our own personal well-being, right? Because I can't have a good relationship if I'm not good in the relationship. I can't have a great career if I'm not great in the career, right? I can't have good health if I'm not the guy taking care of myself and my health. And so having that personal freedom, personal ability to flourish allows us to be able to navigate and experience all the greatest things that life has to offer. So I work with a lot of people in the real estate industry and mortgage industry. I had a brand new client start with me today. Okay. Really neat lady. She's done pretty well, but it's a little off track right now. But one of the things that's really beautiful about that is that 90% of our conversation is about, Greg, I'm really nervous right now. I know I'm hiring you as a coach and I'm kind of excited, but I'm kind of nervous. And I thought, okay, all that's about the personal freedom and stuff like that. So everything else hinges upon our ability to be as free as we can and to flourish as much as we can, because then we have the wherewithal to pursue a goal, whatever it is. I eat well enough so I can actually get out and take a run like I did this morning without keeling over, right? Or I feel confident enough and strong enough in myself and I feel free enough that I'm going to go do that hard thing and I'm going to make $150,000 this year instead of the 70 I made last year, right? We can't do it without ourselves. Take yourself along, right? And the only way that we do that is to help ourselves this way. This is why I'm such a fan of the concept of being a catalyst. It's not just about me, the practitioner, who's helping you. We become our own catalyst because a catalyst is one who can ignite results and outcomes without becoming burned up or burned out in the process. This is why in my logo you see the phoenix. A phoenix has a lot of things happen and then it burns up in the air, but it rises from the ashes as fresh and new and ready to go again. And we've got to constantly be doing this for ourselves. And when I say for ourselves, it can involve the help of other people, like a Pauline Chilton podcast, like a practitioner in Greg, a coach. It could be a friend or a colleague or something like that, right? But we've got to be able to constantly polish the catalyst in us so that we can be everything we need to be to do and live the way we want to live.
And I love your logo. I love that symbol of the change and transformation, because we're always experiencing some form of change and transformation. And there are so many of us who have gone through something and we're still trying to do some good in this world. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I have this show. I feel like my pain is my purpose, right? So going through some things helps you to be able to empathize with people who are going through some things too, to be able to understand what their experience may be like so that you can help them through that.
Sure. And I'm glad you said that, because this is really interesting. We see a lot of people out there who are talking about stuff and it's always like, go hard, be your best self. You got to be up here. You got to push yourself up here, sort of thing, as if we're asking people to be more than what they really are, when all freedom and all success comes from us being all that we actually are, not being more than we are. It seems like we're always trying to one up each other, sort of thing, right? That there's a lot of language around that out there. And I wouldn't say this is like there's certain people out there who are trying to make us be this way. It's just there's this weird thing in our culture that we're always trying to one up and climb up, and that kind of thing of, how come you're not selling more? How come you're not doing more? How come you be more? It's like, well, how much is enough? By the way, that's one of my favorite coaching questions. Pauline, how much is enough for you? And it's not about scarcity, because if your answer comes up like, well, it's never enough, then you're living in scarcity. I had to, for a long time, tell myself, I'm enough as I am right now. Because if I didn't believe that, anything that I pursued was chasing something that was impossible and completely unfulfilling. Like, I would never got any flourishing. I never got any freedom. I never got any fulfillment from pursuing what I felt like I was supposed to be. But my life has never been more glorious, right? And people I've worked with have never been more glorious than us working towards and being more like all we can be.
I love that.
Yeah.
Influence and persuasion are huge themes in your coaching. What's a moment where mastering these skills made a life-changing difference for a client or team that you've worked with?
Oh, that's good. That's a good question. So let me preface this by sharing the two elements of what I mean by influence and persuasion. So influence and persuasion, I've utilized this and I teach it oftentimes with people who, well, as entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, that kind of thing, you got to find clients. You got to find people to buy your stuff, to hire you, that kind of thing, right? So you've got to be able to persuade and influence people in a sales and marketing type of scenario. And I've got an entire program where I get to teach people how to do that and become skilled in it. And it's very useful. But see, if you want to be great at influence and persuasion, you've got to be great at influencing and persuading yourself. Okay. So this is more about how do we process information and make decisions, both internally as ourselves, but also if I'm working with Pauline, and let's say I'm a real estate agent, and I'm working with Pauline and she wants to buy a house, how am I understanding how Pauline's thinking and what's important to her? How does she process information? And how does she get to a particular decision of, yes, I want to do that, or no, I don't? Because if I'm not actually helping Pauline. I'm actually forcing her to do something she may not want to do, which is equivalent to what I was just talking about. Like, everybody's trying to force me to be more than I am. And all I need to do is be all that I am. So Pauline, let's get you all that you want, not more than you want. Like, there's no way for me to sell you something you don't want or need. And if I did, you're going to have either major buyer remorse, you're going to return it, or you're going to hate me, right? And so that's what I mean by that. So influence and persuasion. So can I give you an example of how they utilize this? This is kind of fun. I've had a client who's been in the mortgage space for a long time. When she first started, she had just finished her first year in mortgage. She made like $70,000 for a girl by herself in the first year. Well, we started working together, and we worked for about 4 years together. I've been very blessed that my clients have a tendency to stay a long time. And as long as they're getting value, great, cool. If not and you're done, so be it. Okay. So we did about 4 years together. Okay. In the next year, we helped her hire an assistant. She doubled her income. And nowadays, right, that was several years back, but nowadays she'll bring me in to do some stuff with her team from time to time, a couple times a year, retreats and that kind of stuff. But she currently runs 2 entire branches. She has her own team where they're closing 20 loans a month, but she also runs a couple of branches of other LOs who are doing that sort of thing. So she's doing great. Good for her. Recently, she brought me in with her little team, about 4 people. She's like, Greg, market's shifting, changing sort of stuff for us market. We're trying to figure out how do we find more people who want to sell and buy and then use us, sort of thing. And so I came in and I did an hour-ish with them. And I taught them a little framework on some things that were influence and persuasion based to help them understand how people process, how they make the decision, some key pieces in that. And then I gave them a specific conversational framework. And I said, your mission, now that the hour's over, and you guys are going to start your power hour where you're going to start having conversations with people, use this, and I want you to let me know what happens. I talked to them 2 days later, and they, amongst 3 or 4 of them, I think it was, they had set, it was 4 people, and they had set like 17 appointments with people who wanted to buy. When beforehand they were like, we're struggling, we need a little bit, and we need to generate some more business. Great. Ooh, what does that mean? Is Greg amazing? Yes, but no, that's not what it's all about. Okay. What it was really helpful was that when you get to understand things and you process them a little differently, and then you're willing to take a different action on those, right? None of that meant anything if they didn't go and take action on it. I taught them a lot of cool stuff, and we learned a lot of stuff, and a lot of people read a lot of books and do a lot of podcasts, and we know a lot of things. But if you don't use those things for the benefit of yourself and for the other people that you're serving, it doesn't mean anything. So they had this great opportunity to kind of put them back on pace for what they were trying to accomplish for the year. Yay! Right? That's good stuff. I love that. And this is another example of like, when people win, I win. Like, there's nothing great about me unless other people are getting something beneficial from that. So I love that stuff. If you can't tell, I get I geek out on it a little bit here, right? But what's fun about this is when we originally were talking about studying things like NLP and hypnosis, neuroscience, time techniques, coaching, all that kind of stuff. I've studied that just so I can understand and then be able to be useful with a person, because you're a human being and I got to understand you. But then at the same time, I want you to be able to help understand how to integrate and interact with the world out there, whether that world is involved in your life, area of your life of relationships or your career and your business or your fitness and health. We've got to interact with life in the world. And so that's what I love about doing about this, is that I can help somebody navigate life a little bit better, enjoy it a little bit more.
That's so great. And back to what you were saying about how we talk a lot about high performance in business. And so what does high performance look like? And what is it supposed to look like when it's rooted in alignment and purpose instead of hustle?
Thank you. This is so good. So I'm working on a program right now that I'm probably gonna launch here in the next few months, and it's going to be around this concept of actually taking people through a full program to reboot themselves, to become the catalyst. And what's interesting is we're taking the approach of what's called neurological levels. It comes from semantics and neurolinguistics, that kind of stuff. But the idea is that there's layers of the human person, right? There's our particular purpose, there's our identity, our values, and those kinds of things. Okay, so when we look at high performance, everybody's like, "Oh, you're supposed to be a high performer. High performers don't behave that way. Come on, be a high performer." I'm like, what the monkey does that mean, right? And because, do I just keep performing to keep performing? Where's the top? This is why I asked that question, how much is enough? Because our personal values and who we see ourselves in terms of who we want to be, that's what it's all about. Because if I'm doing more than I need to do and all my values are already met, the motivation disappears. That's how we work as human beings. Our subconscious brain is the part of us that actually does the work, right? We think consciously, we make decisions consciously, but when we act to get results, we do that from a subconscious place. And our subconscious has some rules, and it says, I will always take the path of least resistance. If it's easier, I will do that. That means if I'm going to I need to make lunch because I need to feed my body, and I'm kind of in a hurry, I will go have a cup of ramen before I cook a nice healthy meal, because my path of least resistance, right? So if I'm already meeting, let's say, my financial goals in my business, right? It's like, I'm going to make $150,000 this year, and I'm there, and I'm trying to keep up the motivation, continuing to be a high performer past what I really actually desire. One of two things happens. Motivation either disappears because I'm taking the path of least resistance, or sometimes people love the game enough that keeps them going. It's not really about the money. I just love the game. I was talking to a client today, and one of the things he loves, he puts together multi-million-dollar real estate development projects, big condo buildings and those kinds of things, right? And he was, when I first started working with him, he was doing SBA loans, small business loans, but he wanted to do this thing. So we've grown him into it. Now he's got several multi-million-dollar projects going on. And he says, I've realized I just enjoy putting these pieces together, because you got to do the development and you got to get the utilities in. He says, I just love moving those parts, right? And so it's not as much about the money. So for him, it's just an ongoing interest. But once it stops becoming interesting, he's not going to continue to pursue it, right? That motivation goes away. It's supposed to be that way. That's how we're made. That's actually a protective mechanism for us. So ultimately, I don't care if you're talking about being a catalyst in yourself. What are you being a catalyst for? Like, you've got to have absolute clarity as to what it is that you want, and that it's not somebody else's vision for you. It's not what social media is telling me I'm supposed to be. This is my hell yes, and that's what I need to pursue. Because if you don't have a vision, then the people perish. If you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for anything. And then you wake up one day going, what the hell? Like, why does my life look this way? Why am I not happy? I started off with these great interests. I had these great ideas of what I wanted things to be like, and then real life showed up and interference, and I forgot what I wanted. I forgot who I am.
And that's what focus really is. It's being clear on your vision and being clear on your goals, and then putting together the plan and the steps to implement them, right?
Exactly. It's funny because on a subconscious level, a lot of society, people kind of know this, but it's subconscious, so they don't recognize it consciously. And the reason I know that is because it shows up in their language. So when you study neurolinguistics, language being both creative but also descriptive, and people use words like squirrel or, oh yeah, I just get caught up in shiny things, right? Those two both are very, very common coming out of people's mouth all the time. And what that literally means is that they've forgotten their hell yes. They've forgotten their focus and their mission and what their real purpose and values are. And they got off track pursuing something else because that's what somebody else is doing. And I guess that's what you're supposed to do. This is not a shaming of anybody. This is rescue. Help yourself get clear and reattach yourself daily, if you have to what's most important to you about who you want to be and how you want to live your life. And then just make sure that your everyday activities are consistent and aligned with getting you there, instead of just consistent and aligned with getting you something. Because we're rarely happy with something. That make sense?
Yes. I love that answer. If someone listening is at a crossroads, maybe burned out or unsure what's next, what's the very first step they can take to become their own catalyst for change?
This is a perfect follow-up question to what we were just talking about. When people are at a crossroads, using that language, they're in a spot where they feel like they're not sure what to do next. Sometimes they're stuck. And what that ends up being is, I don't have any options, or I don't know what options to take. Getting absolutely clear as to what you want. And when I say what you want, I'm not talking about like, well, I want that Ferrari that I've always wanted. That's nice, right? But like, be really clear as to what that looks like. How much? When do you want it? How often do you want it? With whom do you want it? When do you want it by? What will that do for you? That's probably one of the most important questions you can ask yourself. Once you make a list of the things you want, then you need to ask yourself, what's important about having that? What will that do for me? Because now you're anchoring in the experience, not the stuff, right? Stuff is fun. Stuff is nice. Stuff is okay. It's fine. But it's never what brings the fulfillment. It's how it makes us feel. It's like it's the experience of it. It's like, I may buy that Ferrari, but the experience was like, guess what? I became the kind of person who was consistent and disciplined enough to be able to make enough money to buy a car like this and afford it. That's what we get excited about, right? When we show up in life in the way that we know we can be and that we really want to be, that's where all the glory is. We may have some nice perks like nice cars and homes and relationships and whatever things that we have, that kind of thing, but it's more about the experience. If we wake up every day and we're having a great experience, I don't miss much. I watched this cool documentary. I think the documentary was called Happy, and they showed a gentleman who his full-time job, this was, I want to say in like India or Indonesia or something like that. I think it was Indonesia. And his full-time job was he ran a rickshaw, right? Gave people a ride in those little baskets, and he would hold on to the thing and, run around almost like he's the horse in a carriage kind of thing, right? And that was his job. And he enjoyed the people and he had fun with them. And then he'd go home, but home was some sticks and some tarps. And he had a wife and several children, 4 or 5 children or something like that. And they ate together, they made dinner together, they laughed and they joked for the night, they had a bonfire, that kind of thing, right? Because they have that kind of weather there. And he got up the next day and he got in his rickshaw, and they were poor and they didn't make a lot of money. But his experience of life was so rich, and he talked about how much he loved his family and the cool things that they do. And I'm thinking, wow, I confuse this stuff so much. I complicate this thing so much. It's like, what is the experience you're having? If you're waking up every day and you're having a fulfilling experience, who cares how much money you're making? Who cares how big your business is or what you're pursuing? Who cares what your trophy wife looks like? Or I don't know. I'm just making stuff up right now. But I think you're getting the idea with that, is that the stuff is there and it can be good, but only if it's part of what you're experiencing that's actually bringing you joy and fulfillment. Does that make sense? Because, by the way, it's not all about us. Like I'm helping people to create their ideal life, but our ideal life does not exist apart from people, because we know scientifically, historically, philosophically, and religiously that we exist in community with people. And anything that we want, if it pulls away and detracts from our relationships with people, at least the handful that are the most meaningful, there's nothing you'll have or do that will ever be enough.
That is so great. Greg, can you share with the listeners how to reach you? What your social media or website, where to find you on social media or on your website?
Yep. So the 3 social media channels I'm most active on is Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And it's under my own name, Greg Schweitzer. Okay, and you can see it on the screen here. And I'm easy to find. You can also email me if you want to, greg@catalysttransformation.com. Okay. And here's what I would say. Is if you're listening to this conversation, and thank you, Pauline, for inviting me and having this conversation with me, because I think these kinds of conversations are some of the ones that are most pivotal in life. There's a potency to these kinds of conversations because they're about the reality of all the good that we want. Does that make sense? It's not easy, right? This stuff can be simple. We had a simple conversation, but like most people are going to understand these concepts. But doing the thing is not easy. So I want to say to people, if you're listening and this is stirring in you, good. If it's uncomfortable, good. Because you're just on the other side of a breakthrough. You're coming up against the edge of like your comfort zone. Because our comfort zone is everything that's in our life right now. But everything that we want, that we don't yet have, lies outside of your comfort zone. And you can have that by letting out more of your authentic self, by being all of who you are instead of trying to be more. And so if you want to have a conversation around that, what that looks like specifically for you, I'm all in. You can just reach out to me and we can talk about what that looks like for you and just what's the next right steps.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Greg. It was, this was great. So I'll go ahead and close out.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
What a powerful conversation with Greg Schweitzer. Thank you, Greg, for sharing your insight, tools, and the deeper why behind becoming your own catalyst for transformation. I hope this episode sparks something in you, whether it's clarity, curiosity, or the courage to take your next bold step. If you want to learn more about Greg's work or explore how you can unlock your own potential, visit catalysttransformation.com. He has incredible resources and offerings for solopreneurs, small teams, and anyone ready to elevate their life and business. And if you've been inspired by today's episode and want to support the Pauline Chilton Show, here are a few simple ways you can help. Visit thepaulineshow.com to grab some merch, explore bonus content, or just stay connected with everything we're building. Use our Adobe Creative Cloud and Descript affiliate links in the show notes. These are the exact tools we use to produce each episode. By signing up through our links, you're not just getting great tools, you're also directly supporting the show. This podcast was created to inspire and empower you on your personal journey, whether you're launching a business, leveling up your mindset, or simply trying to live with more purpose and freedom. Thank you for listening. Thank you for growing with us, and I can't wait to see where your journey takes you next. We'll see you on the next episode.